This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Tobacco Road Sports Radio is so excited to be your home for Triad Sports.
I'm so excited! I'm so excited!
We heard you loud and clear. Our mission is to give you what you want.
You know what I want. I've been asking for it for years. Give it to me. Give me what I want.
The best sports talk and live sports in the Triad, period.
What's up, everybody? Live with Brandon Blake.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Score once again with Brett Wiseman.
Hello and welcome back to the Pit Stop here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Franchise Players, your home for Triad Sports coverage. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
And if you think that's great, wait until you see what's next.
It's going to be good. It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
Tune in at TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. And don't forget to download the new Roku channel, Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Rockin' hard on the boulevard.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Sports right outside of Clarksville, Tennessee, in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Right down the road from Fort Campbell Army Post, we want to start our show off by thanking all the men and women who serve this great, great country and protect us on a daily basis so we can have the freedom to do the things that we are able to do. Thank you very much for protecting this country. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great, great show we have for you tonight. We're going to go over the Titans draft. It's going to be a Nashville night here. A Nashville night here on Frankly Speaking Sports. We're going to talk about the Titans and their draft. And then we have two very, very special guest stars on with us tonight. First, it's going to be Chase McCabe, program director and co-host of the Darren, Daumic, and Chase show. Weekdays, you can watch it from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 102.5 The Game. Chase is also a reporter at Nashville Predators Radio. Then following Chase, we're going to have Tre'Jean Watkins of Broadway Sports Media. That's right. Covers the Tennessee Titans as well. So, folks, we got a show for you tonight. An incredible, incredible show. We're not going to hold up. We're not going to play around. We're going to get right to it here on Frankly Speaking Sports. And let's go ahead and start it off. You know, we start with the NFL draft. Started on Thursday night. Thursday night, everything seems to be going well. You know, the Titans go ahead and we're expecting things. Who will they draft? What a surprise draft this was all the way around. And it was a surprise for the Tennessee Titans as well. But they made some moves here, folks. They made some controversial moves and they made some great moves in order to get more picks in this draft and solidify not only the defense, but the offense on this Tennessee Titans football team. Let's go ahead. Let's start it off first with the big story that happened on Thursday night at the NFL draft. I think stunned, shocked, surprised, baffled, a lot of things going through people's mind during this episode that happened when A.J. Brown was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for their first-round pick and a couple of draft picks. Now, A.J. Brown was traded, and they end up picking up Tre'Jon Burks out of Arkansas, the great wide receiver, which we'll talk about a little later in the program. But A.J. Brown traded, and people were stunned. They were stunned, and they had a right to be stunned. And I'm going to be right honest with you. I was stunned, but I wasn't surprised because as the information unfolded, and as we got more information, we found out why A.J. Brown was traded. Basically because he didn't want to stay in Tennessee. I mean, this is a guy that if they would have kept him, would have been a distraction and could have been a cancer to this ball club. And I give a lot of credit to John Robinson and Mike Vrabel for making this very, very tough call and getting rid of this youngster. But this guy was showing all signs of being another prima donna, being another Antonio Brown type player, which was not needed here in Tennessee. You know, he started with his Twitter accounts, getting on Twitter and social media, making stupid comments, then taking them off 30 seconds later. See, this was all about A.J. Brown. It wasn't about the Tennessee Titans. A.J. Brown wanted to be the focus. He wanted to be the man. It was more about him, and he was not interested in what was best for the team. You know, he became a distraction. He was injured last year. I think he averaged 60 yards a game. But at the end of the day, folks, when you have a player that isn't happy playing with you or is making comments or just doesn't know what the heck's going on with these negotiations, it causes a bad chemistry in the locker room. And when he told them, hey, I don't want to be anywhere in the facilities if we don't sign a contract, it was time. He gave them an ultimatum, and good for John Robinson and good for Mike Vrabel for doing what they thought was in the best interest of the team. A tough decision, but at the end of the game, folks, this man did not belong to be a Titan. He did not deserve the opportunity to stay a Tennessee Titan anymore. Call it the Patriot way, as some people say. At the end of the day, I'd rather call it the Titans way. And I'll tell you what upsets me more than anything here, folks. The thing that upsets me more is he took away from a young man's dream day in Tre'Jean Burks that should have been all about Tre'Jean and him going from Arkansas, having a great career there and becoming the number one draft pick. But instead, it turned out to be a circus, and it was about A.J. Brown. And I feel sorry for that young man. Not that he cares. He got drafted. He's happy as anything. But our attention needs to stop being around A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is no longer a part of the Tennessee Titans, and we should not even recognize it, discuss it, or talk anything more about A.J. Brown unless something's happening that we have to report from. He has a great game with Philadelphia, gets injured, unfortunately, or something related to them playing the Tennessee Titans. From this point on, folks, stop recognizing this guy. Let's give credit and recognition to the people that are currently part of this team. A.J. Brown is an Eagle. He has flown away. Leave him alone, and let's go ahead and gear towards 2022, and let's start worrying about the people we have here on the Tennessee Titans. Now, when we go ahead, folks, I want to go ahead and look at this draft real quickly with you. Let me see if I can bring up all the picks at once for you. We'll see if they can come up here. As you look at these picks and you look at the different rounds, if you can see this on the screen now, Tre'Jean Burks was picked. Then it was Roger McCreary, then Nicholas Petit-Frere, Malik Willis, Hassan Haskins, I can't even pronounce that name. That's a tough one. Chigozium Konkwo, the tight end out of Maryland. Then it was Kyle Phillips, Theo Jackson, and Chance Campbell. So that picture up there is the draft class of the Tennessee Titans. Remind all of you, we are about 10 minutes away from having Chase McCabe, program director and co-host of the Darren, Daumic, and Chase show, weekdays at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 102.5. The Game will be joining us in a couple minutes. But let's go ahead, folks, and I'm going to take down some of this stuff and we're going to bring up player by player, and I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of each player. So let me go ahead and do that right now. The first pick, as everybody knows, was Tre'Jean Burks. Tre'Jean Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. This is a big, strong receiver. This guy will bounce off people, break tackles, and he's unbelievable with yardage after the catch. You are going to fall in love with this guy. Not only is this guy similar to the man we're not going to talk about that left us, he is also has the ability to even be much better, and he's healthy, and he's younger. He's going to be featured across the middle, just like that other guy was. But here's a guy that had 66 receptions, 1,100 yards, 16.7 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. He also rushed 14 times for 112 yards. Tre'Jean Burks is a professional NFL receiver. He is tough. He is mean. And that is what you're looking for in a lead receiver. Happy to have him, as I'm sure you folks will be as well. Then after Tre'Jean Burks, it was round 2, number 35. Who are they going to pick? Are they going to go after a quarterback? Not yet. It's Roger Mccreary, defensive back out of Auburn. Faced plenty of top receivers. This guy has played lots and lots of playing in the SEC. It's amazing the number of great receivers that he has gone up against. He will compete for a starting spot probably immediately. He's physical. He's mean. The one thing about this draft, they went after physicality and toughness. And I don't mean where they draw penalties that are stupid. They're big, physical. They don't care about getting beat up type players. Meanwhile, last year, Mccreary played his career, 42 games, 135 career tackles, 6 interceptions, and 32 pass breakups. Then we go to pick number 39. 39, Nicholas Petit-Frere. He is an offensive tackle out of Ohio State, folks. We needed an offensive tackle. What do? We got an offensive tackle. He's going to challenge for the right tackle spot. He can also play left tackle. Listen to this, folks. 512 snaps. 248 was run blocking. 264 were pass blocking. What did he do? He only played right tackle now. He only allowed 2 quarterback hits. 2 quarterback hits in 512 snaps, 1 quarterback hurry, and 0 sacks. That's what we need, folks, on the offensive line here in Tennessee. One more time, 512 snaps, allowed only 2 quarterback hits, 1 quarterback hurry, and 0 sacks. Nicholas Petit-Frere. We'll go on. We'll introduce some of the newer guys as well. After that, unbelievable turn of events. Who was available in the 3rd round, pick 86? I don't believe it. Malik Willis was there. And I'll tell you what, Tennessee did not disappoint. They went after this all-pro, all-conference, whatever you want to call it, quarterback with the 86th pick in the NFL draft. Could be the quarterback of the future. We'll find out. But he's very mobile. He's what Mike Vrabel likes in a quarterback. Can run, can pass. But, the one thing I want to see what Malik does, if you ask me, is I want to see how well does he learn this playbook. I want to know how intelligent he is. Can he go out and execute the playbook in practice like it has to be done without extra time? How is his willingness? How is his desire to learn that playbook so if something should happen to Ryan Tannehill, that he is ready to go? Folks, don't be fooled. I would be very surprised about it seems like we've been surprised all week if Malik Willis is the starter. Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback on this team. Make no mistake about it. But I'll tell you what, we got a great talent in a man that through 61.1%, of his passes were completed, 2,800 yards last year, 27 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. After Malik Willis, they went ahead, and I'll tell you what, guys, this is the steal of the draft. If you ask me, and I like everybody that they went ahead, but with pick 131, Hassan Haskins was available. This is a physical, tough runner. Similar to Derrick Henry, runs downhill, very effective. He has an unbelievable stiff arm. He can play special teams. In his 3 years at Michigan, he averaged 5.1 yards a carry. That's right, 5.1 yards a carry. 2021, he rushed for 1,300 yards, and he had 18 receptions, 20 touchdowns for Hassan Haskins. He's going to be a beast. He can do punt returns, kick returns, and he can give a breather to Derrick Henry. Unbelievable back, folks. This is a steal in this draft. Then you go ahead after Haskins as we round this up. It was, let me say it, guys, Chico Konkwo. That's right, the tight end. Okay, tight end as I move my stuff around. Tight end for the, I believe it was Maryland. Great after catching the ball. Great yardage as all these guys they got on offense are. Physical, he's very versatile. Can also play halfback if they decide to use a halfback option here. 2021, 52 receptions, 447 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Then it was Kyle Phillips of UCLA. He had like 6 touchdowns, roughly 500 yards. This guy is a slot receiver. Reminds me a lot of Julian Edelman when he played with the New England Patriots, but I see him primarily being used on special teams unless he really shows up during these practices and can be used as a slot receiver in some plays this year. That is Kyle Phillips of UCLA. Well, let me do that. Okay. And then as we move further down, we look over here. Theo Jackson, defensive back out of Tennessee. If he makes this team, folks, most likely it's going to be on special teams as a kick returner or a punt returner. I believe he had 190 tackles, 12 for loss, 3 interceptions, and 20 passes deflected in his career at Tennessee. So pretty much, I think Chance Campbell was the last one, but we don't have, for some reason, his picture up here. But Chance Campbell is a linebacker who led Ole Miss with 109 tackles, 12.5 for loss, 6 sacks, and 3 fumble recoveries. So that's the draft picks in a nutshell, folks. We broke them down. We put them up there. We showed you them. We gave you as much information as we could on them. I'm excited. If you ask me, this is an A for the Tennessee Titans. A lot of things happened in this draft that was crazy, as I'm sure Chase McCabe will be able to tell you when we get him on in a few seconds here. But this was a crazy draft. To be able to get Malik Willis at the number they did just shocked a lot of people. And, a lot of that's not due to the media reports, the information they're getting from analysts, but it just shows you how much you can't really rely on these analysts during an NFL draft, because their ratings on what they see in college is completely different than the ratings of NFL GMs and coaches. And that's what happened. But I'll tell you what, watch out for Hassan Haskins this year. Unbelievable was he at Michigan. If he can run with that physical stiff arm type running that Derrick Henry does, which he does have that, a lot of those same features, it's going to be fun, even more fun to watch this backfield this year in Tennessee. Let's go ahead, take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have Chase McCabe, program director and co-host of Darren, Daumic, and Chase, weekdays 10 to 2 on 102.5 The Game. We'll be back right after this message.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Working hard on the Boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Larry Frank, owner and president of Frankly Speaking Sports, and we want to thank you very, very much for continuing to watch and listen to Frankly Speaking Sports on a daily basis. Over the past 2 years, it's been an incredible ride, and we are growing at such a fast pace. Such a fast pace that now we are allowing businesses the opportunity to go ahead and advertise and sponsor our shows on a nightly basis. We have gotten huge. We are on so many different platforms. We are on Roku TV. We are now on Northeast Streaming Sports on Facebook. We are now on Frankly Speaking Sports on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube. We are on LinkedIn. We are on all other networks such as TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, SportsWire Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and much, much more. And we want to share our success by allowing you the same opportunity to be successful as well. We would love to go ahead and have your business be shown on our show to over thousands and thousands and more thousands of people on a monthly basis. For more information and pricing on how to go ahead and advertise with Frankly Speaking Sports, go ahead and send a message to franklyspeakingsports@gmail.com. Once again, that's franklyspeakingsports@gmail.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. And, you know, when we talk about the Titans, we talk about the draft, we talk about the Nashville Predators who start tomorrow night against the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs. I can't think of a better person to have the honor, thrill, and pleasure of having on our show than having tonight Chase McCabe, program director and co-host of Darren, Daumic, and Chase. The show can be seen listen to weekdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 102.5 The Game. And Chase is also a reporter for the Nashville Predators radio station. Let's welcome in Chase McCabe. Chase, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing well, Larry. Thanks so much for having me.
Chase, thanks so much for taking time. I know it's been a heck of a week for you with everything going on, in sports in Nashville in general. It's just been a big week. But, I want to start off with obviously the biggest story that came out of the draft, and probably to most people unexpected, was the trade of A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles. Wanted to get your opinion and your assessment on that trade, and did or did not the Titans make the right move in your opinion?
Yeah, I think ultimately when you look at all the facts that kind of went into it, AJ obviously wanted and deserved a new contract. I mean, I'm not going to dispute that. The guy deserved to get paid. It was just how much were the Titans willing to pay him. And it was pretty clear that they weren't going to go $25 million per year, which is what the Philadelphia Eagles ultimately gave him. So I think John Robinson, the Titans general manager, did the best he could to try and get something worked out. He got to the point where he felt like the gap was just too much for them to overcome. And ultimately he did what was best for his football team, and that was to part ways with A.J. Brown and get a pretty good bit for him that he parlayed into, obviously, Tre'Jean Burks, his replacement, A.J. Brown's replacement. But I thought that John Robinson handled this situation well, because he was asked by our afternoon show host, Jared Stillman, in the press conference before the draft of, could he trade A.J. Brown? And he didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He said, I don't foresee doing that. But that word foresee gave him the out, just opened the door enough that if he needed to take it, he would. Ultimately, he did. And I think the Titans got a pretty good haul for him with the draft picks and then ultimately drafting Tre'Jean Burks. It was interesting, too. We have Derek Mason on our station, former receiver, obviously knows the position. And he said for weeks, listen, it's going to come to a point where, AJ is a little too outspoken on Twitter. And that was kind of, he's deleting tweets and all these things kind of being perceived the wrong way. At some point, you have to decide what your walkaway price is. They did that Thursday, and now he's an Eagle.
Let me ask you this, Chase, because I don't want to talk too much about A.J. Brown because I made a promise that he's gone now, so we're going to concentrate on the players we have. But how much, let's say if they did keep him, and now they have this, and I know we're looking at something that's not there anymore, but let's say that he held out, how big of a distraction could he have been on this team? And could he at some point ruin the chemistry of what was going on this team?
And I think that's a really good point and something that John Robinson weighed because, we know where John Robinson came from. Bill Belichick doesn't put up with that kind of thing. And I think you can only take so much. So I think with how the season ended of being beaten in the playoffs by the Cincinnati Bengals, everybody making a big deal about the 3 interceptions thrown by the quarterback, the fact that the offense really needed to take steps forward like the defense did last year, that they couldn't afford to have that kind of distraction in the locker room. And I do believe that it was going to become one if this thing stretched into training camp. And, even though there were reports that they were trying to come to a deal, I think the way AJ was operating and the fact that the Titans did look at the fact that he was injury prone, he didn't play every game, he had some key drops, he made some big drops. I mean, he took over some games. So, there's obviously both sides there, but they weren't going to be able to bridge that gap in time. And so I think that was a big reason why John Robinson decided to go ahead and do it and make the trade because of that distraction element.
And I'll tell you what, we are getting an unbelievable young man at receiver in Tre'Jean Burks. I've got to watch him play. I was in in Fayetteville, actually, for about 6 months. And this guy, the thing I love about this guy is, yes, he does the similar things about catching passes over the middle, but the one thing this guy does that I love is yards after catch, which is so big, as you know, in the NFL. The only thing is I kind of felt bad for the guy because I think a lot was taken away from all the excitement of him getting drafted because of the A.J. Brown situation. My question to you, Chase, how much, if any, extra pressure is now on this young man, which he had nothing to do with it, but because of the circumstances he's coming in on?
I think, Larry, I think there's pressure on him, but you know what? I get granted, I haven't met him yet. I haven't gotten that one-on-one, to really see how he ticks. But the things that I've heard him say is he's taking that pressure and he's doing what a lot of receivers do, but a lot of players do. He's putting that chip on his shoulder. And I think that guys like that, AJ had it, a little bit of, oh, okay, all right, you want to put pressure on me because I got to be the guy that replaces the guy. Watch this. And so I think that's a good thing. And I think that's what Mike Vrabel is counting on of a guy that's hungry coming into training camp to shut everybody up of, okay, he's got to replace A.J. Brown. He's got comps to A.J. Brown. A lot of people, you mentioned the yards after catch. That was A.J. Brown's forte. He'd become a running back as soon as that football hit his hands. And that's what Tre'Jean Burks can do too. I think they're very, very similar. I think that Tre'Jean needs to get a little more speed to his game, which I think comes in time, as you enter the league. But ultimately, I feel like they're very similar. But I think he's going to use that pressure as motivation more than anything.
How surprised were you, Chase, with the 35th pick in the draft that they went after DB and Roger Mccreary?
I was surprised by it, but I didn't hate it. I think there's so much uncertainty at the cornerback position. It was weird. I didn't look at cornerback as a need, but I looked at it as an uncertainty because Christian Fulton's been hurt, so that's obviously obviously something that they're worried about, that they're going to have to figure out. Caleb Farley, we know his injury history. The first round pick last year, we barely saw him. So I look at Mccreary as more of an insurance policy than anything. That, okay, you know what? He's a second round pick. Let's bring him in here. If everything works out with Fulton, which I think Fulton's really talented. Caleb Farley, I don't know yet. And then they've been really good at finding some DBs, whether it's free agency or later in the draft. Chris Jackson has turned out to be a nice piece, a good depth piece for them. So I think they're okay at corner. And Elijah Molden, that's the other one that I was forgetting. Elijah Molden, I thought, was a really good pickup last year. I think they're good at corner, and if McCreary works out like they think he's going to, it just is the gravy on top and adds even more.
Chase, the third pick, they go after an offensive lineman, with a name we're going to all have fun pronouncing until we can get it right. Nicholas Mccreary, or however you pronounce it. But listen to these statistics for a minute and tell me this isn't exciting for a team that needed an offensive lineman. He did 512 snaps, 248 of them are run blocking, 264 pass blocking. So 512 snaps. He only allowed in 512 snaps 2 quarterback hits, 1 quarterback hurry, and 0 sacks. If that doesn't excite this offensive line, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I love that. It's just, obviously you gotta take that to the NFL, and
Right.
the experience level is going to go up there. But I think that's why John Robinson and Mike Vrabel ultimately liked him. And Vrabel, of course, Ohio State guys, he's got to support his Ohio State guys. But I think they look at him as in 2 ways. They need a right tackle right now, so the hope is that he can have a strong training camp and become the right tackle right now. And then eventually you're going to have to replace Taylor Lewan, whether that's next year or a couple of years down the road. Taylor Lewan's contract is very easy to get out of after this season. And so there's a potential that they could move on after this year, depending on how he goes, how this year goes for him. Now, Mike Vrabel likes Taylor Lewan a lot. Taylor Lewan obviously looking to have a bounce back year and after being, coming off the ACL injury. So if things with, I'm going to give it a shot, Petit Ferrer work out at right tackle, then, you're good at your bookend positions for the next few years. So I liked the pick. I didn't know that much about him. I had to read up on him a little bit, but, you just gave the stats there. And I think that, they're favorable for him and ultimately he can help the offensive line.
I'm going to tell you something. I was doing a mock draft, and I thought maybe 1 quarterback, maybe 2 at the most, would go in the first round. So I was close there.
I agree.
But I thought everybody else would go in the second round. How surprised were you to see Malik Willis sitting there for the Tennessee Titans to get in that third round?
I was very surprised. I was with you. I thought I saw Vegas put out 2.5. was kind of the number for quarterbacks in the first round. And some people were saying take the over, that they would all go in the first round. I didn't buy that for a second. Now, was I surprised that Kenny Pickett, was the first quarterback taken and he was the only quarterback taken in the first round? Absolutely, I was. So of course I was surprised when they get to that Titans pick and he's still sitting there. And I remember looking at a buddy of mine watching the draft, and I said, they're going to take Willis. I mean, they've passed on him to this point, and now it's just kind of like, you have to. He's a third round pick. And here's the beauty of it all. He's not coming in to compete with Ryan Tannehill. Anybody thinking that this is going to be a quarterback competition in training camp, it's not. But he's for the future that you can develop. And at worst, he's a backup because you've spent a late third round pick on him. So it's not like you mortgage the farm to get this guy in here. And really, it's low risk, high reward is how I look at it from where he fell to. And he's got a lot of talent. I mean, I think that if he can develop in this system, he's going to be working with Tim Kelly, who's the passing game coordinator, Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator. So I think if they can, help develop him over the next couple of years, let him hold the clipboard. I don't think he sees the field at all this year. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if they carried 3 quarterbacks and kept Logan Woodside as the backup quarterback because they seem happy with that. I could be wrong. This could be a competition for the backup quarterback position just so they carry 2. We'll see how it goes in training camp. But to me, there's no pressure. There's no rush to have Malik Willis hit the field. But I'll tell you this, I have never been more excited about a Titans preseason game than I am this year.
I was just going to say that. We'll get to see him in preseason. We know that. And I agree with you. There is Ryan quarterback, without a doubt, is the starting quarterback on this team. Did the Titans do enough in the draft and through transactions before the draft to give Ryan Tannehill all the tools he needs to be successful?
I think so. I still think that there could be room to maybe find a true slot receiver that I don't know if they have found yet. I mean, Kyle Phillips could potentially become that guy. Tre'Jean Burks can play in the slot. You know, the Robert Woods potentially. I mean, they are all versatile receivers nowadays. Are all pretty versatile. But I think if they could find a true slot receiver, and I would look at Cole Beasley. I know they don't have a lot of money left. But if they could move some stuff around and maybe sign Cole Beasley as a slot receiver, I don't think that would be a bad thing. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I like Chig, the tight end that they got, you know, in the 4th or 5th round, whatever it was. I thought that was a good pickup, that he could be a good complementary tight end to Austin Hooper. If you get Austin Hooper of the Atlanta Falcons, I think you're going to be set there, and Jeff Swaim can continue to do his thing as more of a blocking tight end. If Robert Woods bounces back from the ACL, you know, at a reasonable pace, then he's obviously, you know, right now your number 1 receiver, and I feel pretty good about that. And then you obviously add Tre'Jean Burks, the rookie, that is hopefully going to show out. So I think they did enough. I like this draft a lot. I heard you give the grade before you brought me on of an A. I'd agree with you on that. I think John Robinson, you know, obviously it's all got to play out. And you may not hit on all of them, but considering the drafts of the last few years, I feel really good about this one. So I want to see it play out this year. I'm hoping some of these guys can help right away. The Hassan Haskins pick, I love that pick.
I love that. I said that earlier before you came on. I think it's the steal of the draft. I mean, this guy is. I mean, I hate to compare people because I know, but he is very similar to what we already have in Derrick Henry. Great with the stiff arm. He's a great power runner running downfield. And the one thing, I don't know if you realized it, Chase, which I'm sure you did, but there was something else that showed up in this draft that I hadn't seen in years past with the Titans. They hired guys that were physical. I mean, they have a mean streak to them, not in a way that's bad where they get penalties, but they're tough. They get yardage after catch. They fall down forwards, not backwards. And that's a good thing to add to this team.
No, I agree with that. And that's something that I kind of think they needed. They needed some guys full of you-know-what and vinegar, you know, that won't take any crap. And I think they got that. I mean, it's kind of funny to tie in with the Predators starting the playoffs tomorrow. That's what they did. They needed to get a little meaner. They needed to get a little more edge to their game, and they did that. And I think the Tennessee Titans have done the same thing. So I like it. Ultimately, I think John Robinson and his staff did a really good job with this draft. The A.J. Brown trade was a tough decision to make. I think that there's a chance they could have landed Burks at 26. You know, you look at some mocks, he had fallen to that point, or you trade up a few spots to get him. So I think there's a chance that they could have had both, but ultimately it didn't work out that way. They end up getting another receiver in Kyle Phillips later on in the draft. So I think they addressed the needs. They took the best players available at the time that they were picking and were able to address those needs at the same time. So you got to feel good about it.
I want to switch gears with you now before we let you run here. I want to talk Nashville Predators. Sure. Start the playoffs tomorrow night versus Colorado Avalanche. And I tell people, don't worry about these seeds. I remember 3 years ago, President Cup was won by the Tampa Bay Lightning. They ended up playing Columbus, the last seed, and they lost 4-0. So we never know what can happen in playoff hockey. But the big thing here, as you know, is the goaltender being injured, Saros, and now David Riddick, I'm assuming, is going to be the main guy in goal. Talk about Riddick. I don't know a lot about Riddick, but is he capable of handling a starting role in playoff hockey?
Yeah, I mean, he's never started in the playoffs before. This will be his first playoff series, and it was looking like he was going to face his former team, the Calgary Flames, but they couldn't get it done on Friday night against Arizona, so now they got to go to Colorado. It was reported today, and John Hines, the head coach, confirmed it. UC Saros will be out at least the first 2 games of the playoffs, so he will not be available. My guess is they go David Riddick, but I think that the leash could be short, and it probably should be. I mean, you look at the games that he played this year. I like Dave Riddick, but I just don't know if he can carry your team through the playoffs. And I think Connor Ingram, who is going to be the backup, who's been with the Milwaukee Admirals pretty much all this year, has more upside to him and is younger, and it would be a great story if it worked out. I think that they know that if they got to go to him, they trust that they can go to him. I understand he gave up a 4-goal lead the other night against Arizona, but those moments are going to happen. And at this point, what do you really have to lose? So I think they go Riddick tomorrow, and then we'll see how it goes. If he gets shellacked, then it wouldn't shock me to see Connor Ingram going Thursday night. If it's a close game and they lose, then you go back to Riddick. It just all depends on how it goes. And obviously they could go out and they could win. I mean, they did beat Colorado with Dave Riddick in net the other night. So it could certainly happen. I like the grit and the toughness of this team. And they also have the best defenseman in the league in Roman Josi.
No doubt about that. What's the major thing the Preds need to do in this series to overcome Colorado?
Stay out of the box. Colorado has a lot of dangerous scorers on that team. You cannot give them the man advantage, and that's been the kind of an issue for the Predators this season, is taking too many penalties. I get with the style of hockey that they play, you're going to get some penalties, but they got to be smart. You can't take dumb penalties, and that's what they have done at times, and it's cost them. I think this kind of the stretch that they were on towards the end of the season, where it was up and down, had a lot to do with the fact that they couldn't stay out of the penalty box. So that would be my biggest thing, and give whoever's in net, whether it's Riddick or Connor Ingram, help. You got to protect the front of the net, and this defense was beat up at times this year, but obviously Yossi's game speaks for itself. He's going to win the Norris Trophy for the best defenseman. He might win the Hart Trophy for the MVP. Matthias Ekholm continues to be the most underrated defenseman in the game. It's the younger guys in that third pairing that are going to have to go to a different level in these playoffs to help their goaltender out. And then you got to have Forsberg, Duchesne, Johansson, Granlund continue to do their thing, what they've done all year long.
Absolutely. What weakness, if any, do you think that Nashville can exploit a weakness of Colorado?
Well, I think what's interesting is Colorado, the last time these two teams faced each other in the playoffs, they did have a little more grit to their game, but they were young. And now roles have kind of reversed a little bit. And so I think the physicality part that the Predators can bring is how you can, get an advantage. It's just staying out of the box when you do those sort of things. But there is a lot of speed and a lot of skill. And, if Gabe Landeskog, the captain for the Avalanche, if he's back in the lineup, that's only going to add to it. So you're not going to outskill him. That's just the thing. You have to accept that going in. It's, can you bring that edge and that physicality, which, if the Predators and the Flames had matched up, it was going to be a bloodbath because both of those teams play that physical type style. Colorado doesn't bring that as much. So I think that's where the Predators have the advantage, and they're going to have to use that.
How big would it be for the Predators to come back home with the series tied at 1?
Be huge. I think that's the best scenario that you can really hope for, is going out there and splitting. Now, I remember answering that exact same question in 2017, and they came back from Chicago up 2-0. So, that's obviously the really good scenario. But, yeah, if you can go to Colorado, which is a tough place to play, I've been in that building. It's a really good atmosphere, and come back 1-1 at Bridgestone Arena. We know what this atmosphere is all about. I think you'd be perfectly fine with that.
I hate to ask you this, but I have to. Prediction on the series.
Yeah, I haven't given one publicly yet, but It's a tough one, but I'm going to probably give the edge to Colorado. I think they get it done in 6 games.
Well, you never know, and that's why they play the games, as you know. But listen, Chase, what's that?
I've been wrong before, and I hope I'm wrong again.
Yeah, this is a time I hope you're wrong. Well, Chase, listen, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight on Frankly Speaking Sports.
Thanks so much for having me, Larry. I appreciate it.
All right, stay safe, and let's go Predators.
Absolutely. Let's go.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chase McCabe, he program director and co-host of Darren, Daumic, and Chase. You can listen to his show on 102.5 The Game weekdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. All right, let's go ahead. Let's take a break, folks. And when we come back, we have another very special guest for you. We're going to have Tre'Jean Watkins of Broadway Sports Media joining us. We'll be back right after this message. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Larry Frank from Frankly Speaking Sports, coming to you live from Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Are you a professional tattoo artist? If you are, I have good news for you. 13 Daggers Tattoo, located at the Fort Campbell Army Post in Clarksville, Tennessee, is now looking for professional tattoo artists. If you're a professional tattoo artist and you are looking for work, make sure to contact 13 Daggers Tattoo in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Here at Tobacco Road Sports Radio, we ask the tough questions.
Hey, you got any left-handed footballs?
We're never afraid to tell you how we feel.
Come on, we look like the damn Bad News Bears.
We'll debate sports. We'll debate anything.
Man, you lying. You ain't never met Martin Luther King. Knocked the wind out of me. Yes, he did. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. No, he did not.
No matter what, Tobacco Road Sports Radio has you covered.
I'm going to come right back at him. Soldier.
You're listening to Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. I'm your host, Larry Frank, and what a great show it's been so far, and it's going to keep getting better and better and better. And I am so excited, honored, and thrilled to now, well, let's move, something happened there, to now introduce to you Tre'Jean Watkins, who covers the Titans for Broadway Sports Media. Let's bring him up there. Hey, Tre'Jean, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, Tre'Jean, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it, especially under short notice, but I know you were the right guy to bring on, and I said, Don, if I can get you on here, let's go ahead and try to do so. So thanks again very much. I got to ask you, Tre'Jean, and I know your answer already, but I still got to ask you, how stunned, how surprised, how mad were you when you heard the news about A.J. Brown being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles?
To say stunned probably wouldn't be the right word, especially after all the public comments and private comments through sources regarding the Titans and their support for A.J. Brown and to keep him in Tennessee for the long haul. I mean, and it made plenty sense. I mean, A.J. Brown is one of the more dynamic. He's one of the most talented young wide receivers in football. So getting rid of him almost seemed like a bit of a mishap when you thought about it from the perspective of Titans GM John Robinson. So we saw the trade that went down. Of course, I was shocked because, like I said, we have been hearing from John Robinson and the Titans regarding their support for A.J. Brown to keep him in Tennessee for the long haul. So just to see that to just flash up, on the screen, on the Twitterverse, as we all get our sports news these days, to see that flash upon the Twitterverse on the timeline, it was definitely shocking for sure. So But just looking over the aspects of everything, I mean, I guess I've came to a conclusion that, okay, I can sort of understand why they did it. But still, just the idea of trading, arguably their most important player offensively, it just didn't make sense to me. But like I said, over the past couple of days, it's made a little bit more sense to me. So I've understood it a little bit more recently.
That's why I always say nobody is expendable in the NFL. But let me ask you, looking at this draft, the entire draft, and obviously the move they made, which helped in one aspect, helped them get more draft picks. Do you think the Titans addressed all the needs they needed in this draft?
I think they did. The Titans came into this draft with a bit of a wide receiver need, even when they had A.J. Brown, and they got, arguably maybe a top 2 prospect or top 3, top 4 prospect in this draft, and Tre'Jean Burks, who's been compared to A.J. Brown plenty of times before throughout the pre-draft process. So I thought they addressed their wide receiver need for sure in round 1. When they got over to round 2 after they traded back from 26, they got Roger McCreary. He's an experienced corner out of Auburn who's been battle tested plenty of times before. Just look back at his game against Alabama a couple years ago. The guy was targeted a lot, and he didn't give up a ton of production in terms of catches and yards either. So he's definitely an experienced battle tested corner that'll be inserted into a young Titans secondary immediately. So it'll be interesting to see where the Titans play him, because the Titans secondary is already young, still full of talent, and I believe that secondary already has some defined roles, especially on the boundary corner spot where Mccreary plays. So it'll be interesting to see where the Titans deploy him and how they get him playing time early on and throughout the year. And they went out and got, addressed their offensive tackle need, Nicholas Petit Frere. I'm so sorry if I butchered his name. But
we all do, don't worry.
He's an experienced tackle out of Ohio State. He's a good athlete, has a nice size. I think he has a chance to develop into a nice core player for the Titans in the future if things go well. He has the tools. It just matters if he all develops it all sooner or later. And then I think the big thing, of course, the big thing out of the draft for the Titans, that they got Malik Willis. He was arguably the draft's top quarterback prospect. And to get him in the 3rd round when he was projected to go as high as 2nd overall, I mean, you got to, say kudos and tip your hat to John Robinson for maybe, I wouldn't say, I guess say being overly aggressive, but he was aggressive, traded up to get him, despite maybe some teams, despite some teams maybe during the remainder of that 3rd round that might have been able to draft him if he kept sliding further. So they potentially got their quarterback of the future. That's a real big deal for them. And I think one of, probably the 2 best, well, I won't say best, but 2 of the more important draft picks they made came on day 3. You get Hassan Haskins, who can really give you a change of pace in that back. Well, not a change of pace, but brings a similar running style to Derrick Henry, so you can spell Derrick Henry whenever he needs some rest. And then they got Chico Konkwo, who many compared to Jonnu Smith, former Titans tight end, who really developed well after coming in as a rookie. Real athletic, real good set of hands. He's a real good pass catcher. He just needs to add some weight to be effective as a blocker, which the Titans asked the Titans to do a ton of in this scheme. So overall, I think they addressed their needs pretty well. I mean, maybe the Mccreary pick could have been used somewhere else, but I still think that pick can be extremely useful depending on how Caleb Farley and his health or how his play on the field goes. So I think I think they addressed their needs well, and I think it was a pretty overall good draft for John Robinson and the Titans.
They had 2 receivers, like you mentioned, Tre'Jean Burks, and then, of course, Kyle Phillips, more of a slot receiver out of UCLA, to go with Robert Woods and Nick Westbrook-Ekine.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have enough with their run-centric offense, or obviously around Derrick Henry? Do they have enough at the receiver position to be successful, or do you still think they need to go out and get a free agent or someone that is let go by another team during, the camps in order to solidify it?
That's a tough question to ask or answer at this point in time, simply because that the Titans wide receiver group right now has so much uncertainty, tied to it. Robert Woods, who they brought along to be the wide receiver too until A.J. Brown got traded, he's coming off a serious knee injury, a torn ACL to be in fact, and we don't know when he's going to be back. We don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp. I still don't think this is a great overall possibility, but Robert Woods could start the year on the PUP list, and he could miss some time. So you never know what's going to happen with Robert Woods. Of course, you have the unknown with Tre'Lon Burks. You just don't know how rookies are going to adjust to the NFL and to step up in competition, regardless of how talented they are. But you do have some provens there. Nick Westbrook-Akina, like you said. I wouldn't necessarily call him the most dangerous of game breakers at wide receiver, but he was proven, proved to be reliable and came up with some big catches in key spots throughout the year last year. So Kyle Phillips as well. I mean, it just depends on how the wide receiver pecking order shapes out for him, because if it does shake out positively for him, I think he could contribute in key spots during the season as well. I think with his return skills on special teams, I think that's probably where he's going to get the most looks at initially. But if he can get up to speed and get himself in a good position to get some snaps offensively, then I think he can contribute as well. It's just so much uncertainty with that Titans wide receiver group that it's just really hard to, I guess, give a straight answer on if they should go out and get a free agent. I think that's certainly a possibility that's on the mind of John Robinson, because we know he's always open to any sort of move on the roster to help make this team better. But right now, I think it's just too uncertain of a situation at that group to really just give a concrete answer.
Yeah, you mentioned Roger McCreary, that they picked up the defensive back. Also, they picked up a pretty good linebacker in Chance Campbell. A lot of people don't know about him. This defense was already a top-rated defense last year. How good potentially could this defense be once again for the Titans this year?
I think the defense could be even better than it was last year, simply because their corner group last year, I think, it could have been a lot better last year, but this year you're getting a more experienced Christian Fulton. You're getting a more experienced Elijah Moulton. You're getting your top safety duo back with Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard. And you certainly have two young options in case the Titans want to look at it that way. Caleb Farley, a first-round pick last year, who, if he can throw away his injury problems and really put it all together on the field, I think he could be a really, really good football player for the Titans. And if he's not, Roger McCreary was certainly, like I said, a battle-tested, experienced corner at Auburn. So if the staff likes him, they can throw him out on the field as well. So the secondary looks to be in really, really good shape, as well as the linebacking core. I mean, of course, you have David Long, who's played really, really good football after coming to the Titans a couple of years ago. And then you have Zach Cunningham, who was picked up mid-season last year after being picked up on waivers, after being cut by the Texans. He played some really, really good football down the stretch. Probably he played better than Mike Vrabel and that coaching staff could have asked him for, so especially being a mid-season addition, So I think that linebacker core is certainly in good shape, and probably the most, I guess, say, aggressive and positive position group on that defense. It's just that defensive line. Of course, we know about Jeffrey Simmons. We know about Danico Autry. We know about Harold Landry, who just signed his big contract extension this past spring. And you certainly have Bud Dupree, who could really stand to have a more upgraded year in terms of production since he was coming off that ACL tear coming into last season. So he's having a full year to focus on his game, focus on the defense. So certainly you can see an uptick in production from Bud Dupree as well. I think this defense really can be really, really good. So like I said, it could certainly be better than last year. So I'm really intrigued by the potential that this defense has, because they'll certainly be leaned upon this year, especially if things offensively don't go as planned because of all the uncertainty at tight end, wide receiver, along the offensive line, and even quarterback. So this defense will be leaned upon, and it'll be interesting to see if they can answer to the call once again like they did last year.
Okay, Tre'Jean, let us know, how happy were you when your Tennessee man, defensive back Theo Jackson, was drafted by the Titans?
Oh, man. I wasn't necessarily happy per se. I loved watching Theo Jackson when he was at Tennessee. I mean, he certainly And I think he would probably admit this. He certainly didn't have the most fantastic of, maybe his first 2 or 3 years at Tennessee, but his last year, he really picked up the slack. He really started upgrading his statistical production there, tackling guys all over the place in space, being physical, and really being physical at the point of attack against wide receivers in contested catch situations. So it'll be certainly interesting to see how he shapes out his role in this football team. Certainly experienced, battle-tested, and productive defensive backs can really come in and fight for some snaps defensively in the NFL. But with this Titans corner group being so stacked as it is, I think it'll be difficult for him to do that. So I think he'll probably get his mainstay on special teams.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where it goes from here. But certainly, it's always certainly good to see a Vol get drafted.
I thought that'd make you happy.
Yeah, it's certainly good to see a Vol get drafted, especially after all the turmoil that the university's gone through over the past couple years, maybe half decade or so. So certainly good to see Theo Jackson get drafted, and I certainly hope he plays good football.
Last question. We'll let you run, Tre'Jean. Let me ask you this, Tre'Jean. This team, now that you see it molding together, the big problem has been we do great during the season. They're not necessarily in a tough division, although Indianapolis is getting better by the day. We know that. But does this team now have the type of team that can kind of get that monkey off their back sort of and go ahead and go through the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl?
I think that's, just like the wide receiver. I was talking about how there's so much uncertainty with that wide receiver spot. I think you could apply that same sort of thinking to the entire team, and if they're able to get that monkey off their back, like you just said. Certainly this team has seen its fair share of trials and tribulations throughout the regular season, throughout Mike Vrabel's tenure as head coach. But like you said, it's just that playoff monkey on their back. They just cannot seem to get rid of it ever since that 2019 run when they went all the way to the AFC Championship game before they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So this applies to probably every team. No matter how talented you are, no matter how much of a superstar coaching staff you might have, you're going to have a lot of things go right, and you're going to have to play extremely, extremely tight technical football when it matters most. So can the Titans do that? I mean, sure they can. That team has a bunch of talented players. That coaching staff is good. The front office knows how to adjust its roster and knows what to do whenever certain scenarios pop up within their roster, just like their injury situation, their horrible injury situation that the Titans went through last year. But I don't know. At this point, I would probably say no, because I just think there's so many, and I think there's, I won't say so many because that might sound maybe a little bit disrespectful, but there's just a lot more talented football teams in the AFC as opposed to the Titans. You certainly have the AFC North. You got the Browns. They just acquired Deshaun Watson. Look over to the AFC West. You have the team. The AFC West was a juggernaut now. You have the Chiefs.
Yeah, isn't it?
Raiders, yep. Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. All which, all four of those teams could potentially make the playoffs. And that might sound far-fetched because division games can really hamper a team's record. But all those four teams certainly have the talent to make the playoffs. So, and that's just me not mentioning the Indianapolis Colts are in the Titans' own division. They've improved their roster a great deal this offseason.
Yes, they have.
Right now, I'd say no, but certainly anything can happen because, of course.
Well, you got a defense, and defense wins championships. So
of course, defense wins championships. But you got to have an offense to get you there and put you in put that defense in a position so they can win you a championship. So that's certainly the main concern with the Titans right now. It's offense right now, and with as much questions as they have, I just don't think the Titans really have it in them right now to do so. But certainly, we'll see how the season goes, and maybe we can revisit it this topic maybe around December, January. But until then, I just don't think they have it in them right now.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, we want to thank you so very, very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight on Frankly Speaking Sports.
Of course. Appreciate it, Larry. Thank you for having me on, man.
All right, buddy. Stay safe.
I will. You too, man.
All right. That was Tre'Jean Watkins from Broadway Sports Media. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a fun, full-pack show today. Talked a lot of Tennessee sports tonight. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk more NFL draft. We're going to have folks from Carolina Panthers on with us, from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and more as we go ahead and wrap up our NFL draft recap. On behalf of all of us here at Frankly Speaking Sports, I want to thank you all very much for tuning in. And until tomorrow night, have a good night, and we'll see you then.